historically, I suppose, but I do think, I feel pretty confident we can get done in 2 nights. Uh, It is a small warrant, so we will be doing consent agendas to try to expedite the process to keep you in the room, hopefully one night, maybe two. So the consent agendas we're looking at is the school articles, all the collective bargaining articles 6 to 11 would be done as a consent agenda. So if you recall, we presented to the town meeting at the beginning of town meeting and request basically a vote of town meeting to consider certain articles as consent agendas. So the articles that we'll be looking at for that purpose would be the school department collective bargaining articles, which is 6 through 11. And then we'll have a consent agenda for this sort of the very routine articles. And I would classify those as articles 1 and 2, which are the Bowers Committee appointment, the committee reports, as well as the PEG access, which is really just a pass-through of money. And probably the easement's a 2/3 vote, so we probably have to keep that one separate. And then would take the exclusively funded items that are capital items that are from funds that really aren't tax related, that are really fee related, like the Water Conservation Fund and the II Fund. And we will put those articles together as well. And those are mostly DPW articles. It's Articles 25, 26, and 27, as well as Articles 24. And so that'll help to expedite some of the process of the meeting. So that'll be good, I hope. And then as far as the agenda itself, I hope you are, Clancy, do we have the warrant? So what I'd like to do is go to the Article 3, which will probably be the biggest article on the on the warrant. Is really, in terms of, the most details, but not the biggest in terms of money. The biggest items on the warrant will be the sewer borrowing articles for both the needs area. I think where is it? Articles. Hold on 1 second. They're the biggest ones. Biggest money, one's 14 million and one's 22, 33 and 34. Oh, they're there. So contract 37 on needs area 4, and also actually and then the rehabilitation of 15,000 linear feet, which is one of the mains that broke last year that has been plaguing us ever since. That's a huge project. It's a $14 million project. So those will be the biggest articles, but we will spend some time on Article 3, which is the budget amendment. So I'd like to go through that now, just to give people sort of a preview of what it is. So there are really 3 parts to this one, to Article 3, and one dealing with personnel, one dealing with utilities, and one dealing with debt. So the description in the warrant is fairly extensive, and it talks about all of the items in it, but the best way to look at it is to look at this table that's in front of us, and you can see the different areas that are impacted. So from a personnel perspective, there are 2 departments that are impacted: engineering and planning. So in engineering, which is the $52,000 number there, that's the amount we'll be amending the budget by for engineering personnel. And most of that, I believe around 47,000 of it, is an engineering position. We're adding an assistant town engineer. And we're adding that position because stormwater work, stormwater engineering work is something that's becoming more and more prevalent today because of the MS4 permitting requirements from the state. And we'd like to have, rather than have it done by consultants all the time, we'd like to have engineering start to take that over. And so a big part of that would involve having an assistant town engineer. And the difference between an assistant town engineer and, say, a project engineer is someone who manages projects, road projects and things like that, and spends a predominant amount of their time out in the field. Whereas an assistant engineer works on projects in-house and does a lot of administrative functions dealing with, which in this case would be stormwater, which means that that engineer would be working with the Board of Health and with different petitioners that are coming before the town. So there's a lot of work involved in that. And then in general, the engineering department is taking on more and more work because of the project load that the town is taking on, not the least of which is the $22 million sewer project that is on the warrant later on, as well as the $14 million project, the other $14 million sewer project. Those two projects will be managed by the engineering department, so they need staff. So that's why we're adding that position to that office. And we're also doing a salary adjustment to the chief engineer or the town engineer. In this case, it's about $4,700, I believe. And both of these numbers are prorated for 1 year, a half a year, because they'll won't take effect till sometime after town meeting. So that's why, that's what those are for. So the salary adjustment in the engineering director's position is a reflection of the change in duties in that office, adding more staff, and also just to try to maintain competitive within the cities and towns around us, because there's a lot of poaching going on in different cities and towns. Because I think most of you in the private sector are seeing it as well. It's hard to find good employees and hard to hang on to good employees. So that's one of the impetuses behind that change, the engineering. Similarly, in the planning personnel line item, that line item is being adjusted by $10,000. And that's an adjustment to the salary for the community development and economic director. So that position has been vacant for some time. We've tried unsuccessfully twice to fill it, and both times we've lost the candidates to another community, presumably for higher pay. So we are bumping that salary up a bit to try to make it more competitive and see if we can get a community and economic development director on board. So that's and that's why we did that. And if you look at, we have looked at some salary surveys that have been done in the Merrimack Valley, and the planning director's position, if we bump it up, will put us basically right in the mid-range, the average around the area. We won't be the highest paid planner, but it will at least be right in the middle. And hopefully that will make us somewhat more competitive than we have been with the last two attempts. So that's what those two personnel positions so far. So town hall utilities, there was an increase in several utilities. $10,000 is natural gas. So that is in this line item. There's a $40,000 appropriation for this line item. But we've entered into a new contract with the gas service, and the rate, the therm rate is a little higher. So we're expecting the bill for the year to be higher. So we've added $10,000 to the town hall utilities account to cover the natural gas. Similarly, electricity is the same way. The measurement, the rate for electricity has increased, and that has had an impact that we think will be about $380,000 on electricity town-wide, and that total account was 1.6 million. Will end up being 1.9 million at the end of the day with this change. So electricity and gas are both going up, and I'm sure you're all aware of gasoline prices going up as well. So we are bumping up that account to reflect the change since this budget was set and the gas price. And so we've added $100,000 to that account, the fuel account. And it was previously 315,000. And so we've added that money. And then the next account here in the general fund that's being adjusted, actually credited, is the debt stabilization account. So if you recall, the town has a policy of levying the same amount each year for debt service, which is $9 million. If we need less than that, we appropriate the difference and we put it into the debt stabilization fund. And that's where we were in the spring when we put this budget together. The debt service was lower than 9 million by $220,000. So we moved that money, we would plan to appropriate that money into the debt stabilization fund, and that showed up as a line item in the spring budget. Since that time, the state has issued the MWPAT loans for some of the things that we are borrowing on. And obviously our debt service is going up significantly. It's actually, for the first time, going up to a point where it's actually more than the $9 million in the levy. So we're reversing that entry that we did in the spring. And actually, we're going to take money out of the debt stabilization fund to make sure that we stay at the 9,000,066 number that our policy calls for. So in order to do that, we need to take about $690,000 out of the debt stabilization fund to make sure we stay at that level. And the policy, the reason we have that policy is to make sure that the impact on the tax bill is constant for debt service, and the constant is $9 million. So if we need less, we go up to the 9 million. If we need more, we take money out of debt stabilization. And so this is the first time we're actually hitting that point where we need more than the 9 million to pay for debt service. The good news is that even though we are taking some money out of that account this year to do that, we are still putting more money in than we are taking out of that account. So it's a net positive in the debt service state, the debt stabilization fund, which is good. And it's been that way ever since the fund has started, which is why the balance in that account is around $22 million. Then the next two
John,
areas.
before we get there, do you want to take, there's one or two questions on the first half. Do you want to do that, or you want to finish the article, or?
Why don't I finish the article and then we'll take the questions.
Okay, all right, and then we'll, for everybody in the audience, I guess we'll take the questions after each individual article. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And these next two should be a lot quicker than the first part. So the next two is the debt service for what I mentioned, the debt that's being issued by the Water Abatement Trust. And so we're issuing debt for the ozone treatment plant, which is the water debt that we're issuing. And we're also issuing debt for sewer contract 36, I believe. So that means that those two debt issuances that were approved by town meeting a couple of years ago are being covered by these two debt service appropriations, both in water and sewer. So we're adding to the water enterprise account, we're adding $491,000 in debt service to cover that bond authorization. And to the sewer or wastewater enterprise budget, we're adding $379,000 to the debt service to pay for that debt that was recently issued. And the good thing is that the the revenue that is needed to cover that has already been accounted for in the rate structure of the water and sewer rate structure. So that was already voted on by the board a while back for FY '22, and it's already built in. So even though we're showing an increase to these budgets, we've already, the revenue that's being generated by the current water rates will pay for that. So there's no impact to the tax levy itself. And then the impact to the levy, based on the $331,000 is, it's a 0.2% impact to the budget. And the budget is, over 160 something million dollars. So the impact of the budget is negligible. So those are the three areas that we're changing. That really sums up the whole, the budget amendment, and I'll be happy to take some questions, Clancy.
Shelley, you're the first one in.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, so question on the electricity. Number one, how does this new rate compare with National Grid? I know that we went to this thing where we're going to get more, better rates and stuff like that. How does this compare with National Grid?
so those are two separate things. So we do two things in town. One is that we negotiate our own rate exclusively for town electric, because we're a big consumer of electricity, which has nothing to do with the aggregate rate that we negotiate for residents. So this isn't impacting that. But I guess to try to answer your question, I don't know the exact answer, but when the next time, we've done very well with the aggregate rate, it's always been better than National Grid's.
Okay.
But that's not what this is, but forecasting what we're seeing here, I would expect that the next time the rate is renegotiated, unless things change, the rate will probably go up. But I still think we'll do better than the rate that National Grid offers, because that's what we've done consistently since we started the program.
Okay, and then the other question, which I've asked many times at town meeting, is can the town look into getting more solar power? I mean, why are we paying money year after year after year when we can get it from the sun?
So we have the maximum amount of credits allowed by law that we get from solar generated power.
Oh, you mean like the farms like that?
Yes.
that-
So we get
Okay.
one here in Billerica that we use all of that energy, and it goes towards all of our bills, both on the town and the school side. And then there's a farm out in Shirley, a solar farm that we have a contract with, and we use that as well. We've also looked at exploring putting solar panels on buildings in town. And right now, the credits aren't really, or I should say, the grant money isn't very good to buy the rooftop units and get a good return. So we did outfit the high school for that, but we didn't put the panels on it, and we're waiting for it to become more cost efficient to do something like that.
Good. I'm glad to hear that's in the plans anyway. Thank you.
Shelley, for reference, I just want to let you know, so National Grid right now, their rate is 0.097 and ours is 0.093. And then in the winter, their rate is going to jump up to 0.14. So that's just for reference where the aggregate energy is going and National Grid's rate that's coming up.
Okay, thank you.
So Clancy, just for further references, when is that 0.093 expiring?
January 2022, I believe, or 23.
So just for people's own edification, National Grid changes their rate twice a year. They have a summer rate and a winter rate, and the winter rate's always much higher. And that's what's happening, is that their rate is going up. So our annual rate beats both their summer and winter rate.
So John, next up is Michael Parker.
Hey, Michael.
Give him 1 sec. There he is. Go ahead, Mike, you're in. You just got to unmute yourself. Mike, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. The other Zoom meetings, never mind. On this particular article, I took a look at the numbers, and I know you say it's a, negligible increase in our budget based on an overall, large budget. But when we look at individual line items, and specifically one of them was the electricity, which is a 24% increase. The fuel is a 25% increase. The water enterprise principal is an 18% increase. The enterprise interest, a 33% increase. Those are large numbers presented to us, and especially with the water enterprise and wastewater enterprise budgets, these are the majority of that 1.2 million request. And you say it's already been appropriated in our rate, so why do we need to appropriate it now is my question on that one.
Because in the budget process, there's the revenue side and the expenditure side. So when we forecasted, this isn't a surprise. I mean, town meeting voted and authorized the debt service on the bonds that were issued, and now we have to pay for. But when the rates were set, it's based on the budget and based it on forecasted debt. So we set the rates to make sure that we could pay for this debt. But then when you get to the point where we didn't put it in the budget until the debt is actually issued. So the debt wasn't issued in the spring. And sometimes the state delays the issuance of debt. Sometimes they say, well, we're going to wait till the following year to issue a large block of debt for these through the trust. And so you not always guarantee that it's going to happen. So we don't put it on there unless it's actually been issued. And sometimes that falls outside of the budget process through a budget amendment, which is where we are now. So that's why we're doing it. But the reason we have to do it is because this is the expenditure authorization in the rates of the revenue authorization.
Okay. So it's not directly related to this particular article, but you mentioned that there are two large other articles that we're going to be funding. Is that going to eventually catch up with us again in a future budget where we have to fund an additional $800,000 into these accounts because we took on more debt? Just asking because everyone should know if we're funding more, then we take on more debt and it goes to our budget. So is that a future amendment we would have to make when we fund $36 million worth of sewer contracts?
So it is, and it's something we talk about every year when we talk about the long-term debt plan in the long-term debt policy. And if you recall, there's a graph that I usually put up, and it has to do with that $9 million. We want to maintain the levy at $9 million. And if we go above that levy, we take money out of debt stabilization because we don't want to have large, swings in levy impact because of all the infrastructure work we're doing. So that's why we have that policy in place. For the concern that you just brought up is that, well, what's going to happen 3 years down the road if we're issuing, another $1 million in debt service? The answer is if we're $1 million over 9 million, we're going to be taking that out of debt stabilization to make sure the impact of the levy into the taxpayer is not a shock. So we try to keep that constant. But the answer is yes. So you'll see this is being, if those 14 million and 22 million is issued, then the projects would be done. And I would expect that that debt would be issued probably 3 or 4 years from now, when the projects are nearly complete. And that's when you would see it showing up on these rate sheets.
Okay. And then just as far as solar, I happen to be large electrical contractor, and the federal tax credit of 26% as soon as you install that system.
Yeah, I miss you. You kind of cut out there. I caught you right up to federal tax credit of 26% as soon as you install that system. Whoops.
An apprenticeship program and get people up there and get somebody to design a little system and put it up on the high school and start from there. I think.
Mike, you froze there for a minute, so we missed you.
Oh,
We
sorry
got
about
up to
that.
it. Where'd we catch to, John?
We lost you right at when you talked about there's a federal credit program, 26%.
Oh, am I still there now?
Yeah, you're
Yes.
here. We can hear you.
I think that would be something that we should still be looking into. Well, that tax credit is available. Get it on the high school and get it on all our buildings that we're gonna build. I think it would be a great add to our facilities for future stabilization on the electric grid when God knows what goes happen in the future. So I would echo Kelly's statement on the solar venture in our town's buildings.
And then, Mike, this is the graph I put up every year that shows the projected debt schedule going out for 20 years. And so you could see that obviously it's going up over time. And that blue line is the line we want to stay at. So anytime we go over that blue line, which you can see when I did the schedule, we were projecting it to go over around 2019. Yeah, we're not too far off, actually. Yeah, it's pretty good. This thing's pretty old too. It held up pretty good over time. But so we went over right around the time that I said. And then this is a table that shows the debt stabilization funding schedule. So it shows you the yellow column is free cash that goes in there every year, $1.8 million. And
Yep.
then it shows projected amounts that we would have to take out, the drawdown amounts, to maintain that level of 9 million a year. And this is over a 20-year schedule. So clearly we're gonna get interest in that account. We've accounted for that. And then also there's levies that are gonna be, when we were under the number, we put money in. So it just shows that the balance in the account will always be positive, and that, we can, by using this formula and putting in at least 1.8 million a year in free cash, which we've religiously done with the exception of 1 year, we should be able to maintain that $9 million levy limit and still do these projects. So I'm particularly happy about what we have done as a town is that we put together a capital plan for wastewater and for schools. But we also put together a financial plan on how to pay for it without crippling the taxpayer. And we've been living up to that plan for 10 years now. And the proof is in the pudding. We have $22 million in the debt stabilization fund, which is richer than what my schedule shows. And over time, we'll pay out about $20 million in 20 years for the high school to keep it under $200. And we'll pay about $32 million out of the debt stabilization fund to pay for the wastewater debt that goes over the 9 million.
So, all right, I'll let that finish there. Thank you for bringing up the old schedules and added information. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
John, we have no other questions at this time, so we're good to move on.
All right, so Article 4 is to transfer and appropriate the sum of money from the town debt stabilization fund to the general fund debt service budget. And this is a lot of what I was just talking about, which is our policy in the article. You notice it's numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. And there's several components to our debt service policy. The first one is we transfer a minimum amount of free cash of $1.8 million, which I just showed you on that schedule in each year. The second component is that we appropriate the difference of any year that is lower than 9 million into the debt stabilization fund. And the third one is the annual appropriation is over the $9 million, then we take money out of the debt stabilization fund to debt service. And then the last one is to ensure that the tax impact of both the high school and the Parker School is less than $200 on the average single-family home. We draw down money from the debt stabilization fund. And we have, go back to that schedule if you can, Clancy. That table. So is it drawdown in there? Yeah, so the drawdown is in there. And you can see there's a schedule of how much we'd have to draw down each year to keep it under $200. And so this year, 2022, the year we're in, and the drawdown, and again, this table, I'm impressed that it's holding up so well. That's the actual number that we're drawing down, the 1,125,000 is the amount we're drawing down. Now that'll go on out until 2028, and then the number will start to drop off significantly from there, because the impact of the debt service at that point, the principal will be coming way down. And so the impact will start to be closer to 200 with needing less help from the debt exclusion fund. So that's what that portion is. So this article is fulfilling two parts of that policy. One is the 1,125,000, and the difference is about $670,000. That is what we are over the 9 million by. So the two combined is 1.774. That's coming out of debt stabilization to be basically used to lower the levy amount so that your taxes aren't impacted in a drastic way. So that's what this article is about, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
John, we have no hands raised on this one.
All right. Clancy, do you have the PowerPoint for the bike path article that we did previously?
Yep, hang tight.
So the bike path, Yankee Doodle bike path is Article 5. It's a CPC article, and they have approved and recommended this article for $350,000 to town meeting, which is a statutory requirement of any money being spent with CPA funds must be recommended by the CPC, which it has, thankfully. Where we are now is we are trying to get to 100% design on this project. And we are also working on doing appraisals of properties. I should just go back for a second, Clancy. Appraisals on the right-of-way properties and planning for the acquisition of these properties in the right-of-way. So this first slide just tells us an overview. It shows you that this project has had several iterations over the years since I've been here. It's about 11 years. 4 miles, it's a 4-mile project. I think 2 miles have been added to this thing over the last 10 years. It's a $9.5 million construction cost. It will be funded by the TIP all the design money is funded through the town. Still a good bargain for the town for $1.8 million for basically, it looks like around a $12 million project. That's what we've spent to date, about 1.8 million, including this money if it's approved tonight. So it's like I said, it's a 4 miles. If you go to the next slide, Clancy, this is sort of a history of that money, the 1.8 million. So it's mostly money that goes to the design firm, which is VHB. And so this last ask that we're doing is this $350,000 for 100% design submission. And the most recent funding approved through CPC was $367,000 in 2019, which we're in the process of spending down. Most of that has been spent. And this will get us to a point. What we're concerned about is making sure we are shovel ready before we get to our space on the tip. And the tip, I believe, is 2024, the spring of 2024. If you go to the next slide, Clancy. Okay. Yeah, construction is supposed to begin in the spring of 2024. This is our schedule that, that we've been on, which is December of 2020, the 75% highway design submission was done. And then October of 2021, that's coming up, we will resubmit the 75% highway design with the structural bridge design in it. That was one of the issues. That's been one of the hangups with the Mass DOT, is they want the design work finished on the bridges before they'll approve the 75% design. And then in January, after they'll review there's a 90-day comment period after we make the submission. And they'll work through that in a maximum of 90 days. And then from that point, we'll work towards the 100% design, which is really what the appropriation is for, is that 100% design. And then once that is complete, and part of that money will go towards doing appraisals of the right-of-way to acquire those easements. And then we will have to come back to the town for payment for those easements. So that will be sometime in the future. It could be next spring, or it could be a later date, but hopefully we can get through all this stuff and come back in the spring. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to, the biggest thing about this and why we're doing it off schedule, usually CPC does their work in the spring, but we wanted to keep this project moving along so that we don't miss the bid deadline for 2024. There's a lot of times the state will move your project further out if you're not ready. So we're making sure we avoid that. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If you go to the next slide, Clancy, too. I don't know if I missed anything here, but, this is the detail of the cost of the $350,000. So 70,000 is going towards the highway design submission, 100% design. 40,000 is going towards the right-of-way appraisals. I'm sorry, 150,000 is going towards the right-of-way appraisals. And then 40,000 towards right-of-way design. And then the final bridge design is about 30,000. And then the PSNE submission, that's for getting ready for the bid documents, is about 60,000. So that brings us to the total of 350,000. And then the future needs will be, I left one thing out. I mentioned the easements, so we'll have to come back for money to pay for the easements. And I don't know what that number is yet, because if we're fortunate, some of these entities, the largest being, of course, the MBTA, we're hoping that I know they won't give us the land because they don't give anything away at the T. But we're hoping that they will charge us a minimal value for it. And if that's the case, then the number won't be as high. But if that's not the case, then we'll have to come back for a higher number. And then the other thing that the state won't pay for is construction services, which is basically project management of the project. So that is something that we would come back for probably in the fall of 2023. So that's it. I mean, I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
John, first up is Martha. Go ahead, you're in the meeting.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, I had actually raised my hand on Article 3. I just had a quick question on what is the average single home medium household price? I mean, what do you base that $200 on?
So it's based on the average single family home assessed value, which I think in the last time it was around close to $500,000, I believe.
$500,000.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just curious because that changes. So if your house is worth $1 million, does that mean that you'd be paying $400 towards
Yeah,
that?
it means you'd be paying a lot more if your house is worth. So typically the way it works out is if you're a senior and you live in an older home that you haven't really touched or built anything on, those assessments tend to be lower. So they probably hit less than someone who just bought a home or built a home or built an addition. So that's kind of how it shakes out.
Okay, thank you on that. And then on the bike path, I mean, this is all in design stage for the total bike path, which is 4 miles. Am I getting this right? How
Yeah.
much do you think by the time we get this construction supposed to start in 2024?
Yeah.
By the time we get it done, what's the cost gonna be?
So
Approximate.
when we put these costs together, it includes cost escalation based on the year that it's being built. So accounting for cost escalation, the construction cost is $9.5 million right now. And the amount that is spent is about 1.8 million. And I would guess that those easement purchases are going to be anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million. Or if we get lucky, there'll be less, but
Yeah,
that's-
it would be
yeah.
nice if people donated.
I think some will and then some won't,
Yeah, okay, well, expensive bike path. I hope I can still pedal a bike then. Thank you.
Yeah,
John, next up is Marlies.
okay.
Go ahead, Marlies.
Thank you, Clancy, and thank you for the presentation. My comment is not so much on the bike path as that it's on the CPA. After the talk that we had of the budget amendments and the money transfers from debt stabilization fund, what was for the CPA the spring budget, and why is there no talk of amending that budget?
The spring budget for the CPA was what, $40,000, right?
14
No,
million?
$40,000.
The spring budget, but how could you get 350,000 out of that? No.
Oh, I
the-
thought you
I
talked
see
about
what
the
you're saying.
administrative budget.
Yeah, 45,000, that's the administrative budget. We're talking the CPC budget, the whole budget from,
Oh, yeah, I have that number. Hold on, let me get that for you. It's in my, hold on, let me just see if I can grab it.
thank you.
It's 2 million plus, but let me find out exactly what it is.
Mhm.
Okay, so CPC is $2,056,006. That's the budget right now. But what we have forecasted, so, not accounting for what's being spent out of it, but that budget is growing at a healthy rate because you pull in $1 million plus each year, and they don't typically spend that each year, at least they haven't to date.
So if the budget was 2,066,000, it didn't seem to be reflected in the budget that was presented. And 10% of that would be 206,000. Yeah, I'm not good with numbers. You are, but 10% is a little bit more than the 100,000 that was in that budget.
Are you saying, so what's your concern or your question is that,
The previous articles that you mentioned, there had to be an amendment to a budget, and there doesn't seem to be an amendment to this budget to appropriate the 350,000.
so you're thinking about it in different terms, so what I'm.
Oops.
Yeah, hold on, John. I think John clicked the line out of his computer. Hang tight.
Thank you.
All right. Did that work?
You're back in.
Am I back in?
Yep.
Yes.
So what I'm talking about is, the 2,056,000 is not a budget, it's a revenue, it's
Yeah.
how much money is in the fund.
Okay.
And the CPA budget is, I don't know, when you mentioned budget, I obviously think about the budget for the administrative cost, which is $45,000.
Yeah.
And then the budget is established basically every year by town meeting based on what the CPC recommends to spend out of their account.
Okay, that's where we disagree, but I
Okay,
don't want to fight that out here. That's
okay,
I understand. So I do think we disagree on something substantially here with regards to budget of the CPC, or say the CPA funds for Billerica, the community funds for Billerica. That's basically what I wanted to ask. I think that's where we might have a little issue, but I think I'd rather discuss that with you later, outside of this.
Well, that's fine. I mean, that's my area, budget, so I
Right.
feel pretty confident about it, but we
Yes,
can talk about it.
thank you. Thank you very much, Clancy.
John, we got no other questions.
Okay. All right, so that was Article 5. Then the 6 to 11 are school articles, and they're going to be funded. They're going to be done as a consent agenda, and they'll be done by the superintendent. So I'm not gonna go over them here in this meeting. 12 is the only collective bargaining article that is being offered by the town. And this is a collective bargaining article for civilian dispatch or police dispatch. And this collective bargaining agreement is actually not ended yet. It's not terminated yet. The term of the collective bargaining agreement is from July of 2019 through June 30th of 2022. So normally, we really wouldn't even be having this discussion. There'd be no articles on the warrant for CBA collective bargaining agreements. But there's an issue in civilian dispatch that's not unique to Billerica, in that we have a high turnover rate. We've lost, I would say, about 5 employees, and we only have 10 over the course of the last year or so in turnover. And other communities, including the regional center over in Tewksbury, are having a difficult time holding on to employees. So we thought that we should re-examine the salary schedule and make some type of correction so that we can try to hold on to employees in civilian dispatch and provide some level of continuity and stability to that department. Because if we ignore it any longer, it could get to the point that they're realizing at the regional center, which is that they don't even have enough people to staff the place at times. So we're not there yet, but we certainly want to avoid that. So we opened up the contract again and we gave them, I think, a rather generous bump up in their salary schedule. And I don't know, Clancy, do we have that? Can we put that up or?
If you give me 2 seconds, I can pull it up.
Yeah, and I'll talk about it while you're putting it up, but, so basically what we did is cut out the first 3 steps and make the others, the next step, the first step. And, because we weren't even hiring people in those first 3 steps, because nobody would come and work here for those 3 steps, so we did that. If you look at, the top, yeah, that's good. So if you look at the top one, this, the top one is what we're changing to, and the one below it is what we are now. So the best way to kind of see this is if you look at year 4 under the 4-year thing, and you see that the weekly salary is $973.50. And then you can see up top that that $973.50 has been moved into that first step. Instead of being the fourth 4-year step, it's now over. Clancy, can you kind of wave over the year 1 up top? Yeah, right there. So that's where the $973.50 is. And then from there, it goes up from there. And we also added a 20-year step. Interestingly enough, there aren't a lot of 20-year employees in civilian dispatch because of the nature of the job. It's a very high-stress job. And we have 3 employees that could make it to 20 years out of 10. And the other ones we know are either close to retirement or they'll probably leave, because a lot of times they leave to go to other jobs like police or fire. So that's not a big cost to add that 20-year step. But so it was pretty generous, and I would say it would range from anywhere from 13 to 14% of a bump for any employees, and some were at 8%. So it depended on what step you were in. And the total value of it is that $42,000 for 10 employees. But we did, this is a negotiation on a 150E, and we like to try to get something in return. And what we did get in return for that was one of the issues we had in this collective bargaining unit is that they have 7 days vacation. And they're not really on a 7-day schedule like the police or like the fire. And so they were getting 240 hours of vacation, and most of the other unions in town, in fact, all of them except for public safety, were at 200 hours of vacation. So we got them to come in line and give us back that time to be consistent and allow parity with the other unions. So it basically amounted to, I think, between 3 and 5 days, depending on the employee, and that they gave back to us, which I think is pretty good considering they got the bump they got. And then the other issue that we got in return for the contract was making sure that, this issue always comes at the town meeting. If we go to a combined dispatch, that they will cross-train and not ask for any type of financial compensation for that change of working conditions, which is, usually the case. So the idea is that we're paying for that right now with this change, and they're giving that to us as part of the negotiation. So in the future, when and if we go to combined dispatch, that won't be a hurdle that we have to negotiate with this union. So those are basically the 3 components, and the cost of it is $42,000, and that's a raise and appropriate, which is a majority vote of town meeting. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
John, we have no hands raised.
Okay. Um, So then it's Article 12, and then all Article 13 through 20 have been withdrawn because those were just placeholders for any other collective bargaining agreements that may or may not have been settled. And as I said, there are none that are expiring until June 30th, so we're in good shape there. And the next article is Article 21, which is the town's capital budget article, which is not that big this year. It is basically 2 5-ton dump trucks that are replacing some old dump trucks. One dump truck, I believe, has around 75,000 miles on it, and one dump truck has 100,000 miles on it, which probably doesn't strike you as a lot of miles, but the issue is that there have been, one of them has had significant hydraulic issues, hydraulic system issues. And the other one, similarly, we've been dumping a lot of money into. So it gets to a point with some of these vehicles, if you're spending $5,000 to $10,000 a year to keep the thing on the road, it's not worth keeping it around anymore. So that's kind of where we were with those 2 5-ton dumps. We are putting in for a new ambulance, just as, you know, to keep up with replacing the fleet on a regular basis. Thing about ambulances is that it takes a long time to get it, so if this gets approved at town meeting, we probably won't receive that ambulance for well over a year. In fact, we just got one that was voted a year and a half ago. We just got that delivered in the last 6 months. So those are the 3 items that are being funded through free cash, for amount of $745,000. And then the last item is a small dump truck for the cemetery department that's been coming out of sale of lots and graves. And that's a $65,000 transfer out of that account. So that covers it for the capital article. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
John, I'm gonna bring in Mike Parker.
Hey, Mike. You're still muted.
There we go. That's better. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what the total free cash balance is prior to expending funds?
Yes, I'll put that up. And Clancy, can you let me share my screen?
I got it, John, I think.
Okay.
Is that it, what you're looking for?
Let me make sure it's the right one. Yeah, that's the right one. Okay, yeah, can you just, can you make that a little bigger at all, or? There you go. You might have to move around, but that's good. So, Michael, this is the far left is the free cash number, which is 5.7 million. And that was approved, I believe, just yesterday. And we're looking to spend about 4.4 million out of that account through all of the items on town meeting. And that would leave a remaining balance of 1.3 million, which we weren't going to spend because the Boston Road North project next spring, we were looking to, there's a piece of something on here for Boston Road North. There's easements are on here that we'll go over a little bit later. But that project, there's a portion of that project that the state won't pay for. I believe that's a $9 million project, but the streetscape work and the undergrounding of some of the utilities that go across the street, the state won't pay for. So we're gonna need roughly 1.3 million to do that. So we're leaving that balance in there for the spring for that purpose. And then the rest of it is being encumbered if town meeting votes them for the rest of these articles. But that's the 5.7 million. And that's where it's all going. The only things we haven't covered yet are the last 3, I believe, which is actually, well, the school article, which we won't go over, but the school is going to be asking for 1.16 million. And they'll also be asking for money for a study to update the study they did about 8, 9 years ago of their whole system, and that's a $300,000 appropriation. And then the town, and we'll go over this later, we're asking for $500,000 for the Glad Valley project and $700,000 for easements along Boston Road North. And then the last piece is the transfer into debt stabilization that we do on an annual basis, that $1 million. So that will cover all the items in free cash.
So on the old vehicles are,
Oh, we lost you. You still there?
what's going on here?
Oh, there you are, you're back now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Will we see returns from the old vehicles in sort of a sale, or is the prices listed based on a turn-in?
I think it's the latter. They turn them in. I believe I don't know if they turn the plows in too. I believe we're buying new plows, so, but I don't know if they keep the blades or not.
Okay, thank you.
John, no other hands on this, this article.
Okay, then, so the Article 23 is a school article. That's the one that I had mentioned, it's just money to update that study, and that'll be presented by the superintendent. It's a study that was done about 8 or 9 years ago. It was done by Dora and Whittier, and it was the jumping off point to the high school project. And I guess in a nutshell, they recommend that study basically recommended that we build a new high school, and it also alluded to closing the Vining, and then a whole list of repairs to the other schools. So obviously, we checked a couple of boxes off that study, but so much time has passed that it makes sense to revisit it and update the study, because the next step for the school department, I think, will be a significant one, and they want to make sure that they're operating on the most up-to-date information. So that'll be presented by the superintendent at town meeting. And then the Article 22, which I skipped, is their capital article, and I'll let him talk to that. But this is a list of all the capital projects that he said that they needed to get done, and we were fortunate enough to have enough money to fund all of them. So that's 1.16 million. And then Article 24 is the town's article. This is to fund sewer manhole repairs from the II infiltration fund. And so that's a small appropriation, $50,000 from that fund to repair manholes. And in a nutshell, II is infiltration inflow. And what it is the water that gets into the sewer system that's not supposed to. So during a rain event, water that leaks into a sewer system, which oftentimes is through a manhole cover, increases the volume significantly and overtaxes the treatment plant. So DEP is big on making sure that we are constantly repairing II infiltration. So that's what we're doing here. We are just appropriating $50,000 from the II fund, which is a fund that's fee-based. When developers come in, they pay a certain formula fee based on the size of their project and what they're contributing to wastewater. And that goes into that account, and that's why we're allowed to take money out of there. Clancy, can you go back to that free cash sheet? I believe the II, so there's $624,000 in that fund, and we'll be taking just $50,000 out to fund this article. Okay, you can go back.
John, Shelley Rosenbaum Lippman has a question. Can I bring her in?
Okay, yep.
Go ahead, Shelley.
Hi,
Hi.
quick question for you, and I think I know the answer to it already, but I just wanted to make sure. I am assuming that that things like the 1.16 million for the schools and, some of these other things, like the dump trucks and so on, that, this is stuff that we're kind of moving up on the list for capital expenditures, that we won't have to pay for later on because we're doing it now.
Yes, so a lot of times we have a capital account in the budget, which is only $500,000. And we do the best we can with that, but it doesn't pay for the huge wish list that you see in the back of the town meeting book. So when we approve free cash, we're able to, move things up on that list that we wouldn't otherwise be able to get to.
Right, that's what I thought. Thank you.
No other questions, John.
Okay, so that's manholes, and then Article 25 is to fund the high lift finished water pump and 24-inch master finished water meter replacements. This is sort of this is something that the water department wants to do, and it's a $400,000 expense. And we're looking to pay for it out of the Water Conservation Fund. And Clancy, if you can go back to that free cash sheet again. There it is, yeah. So this will pretty much clean that account out, but again, that account is constantly being added to by projects that come into town. So even though it's leaving a $10,000 balance, I expect that fund will increase again over the next year. But that's money that's not being charged off to the taxpayers, so that's a good thing. And I think there's a slide for this in Abdul's presentation, right?
Yes, it'll be in everybody's book.
Okay, all right, so yeah, this is DPW project, and it will be, like I said, this is probably be in the consent article because it's exclusively paid for through water conservation and won't impact the tax levy. Any questions?
No questions here.
Okay, Article 26 is to replace water mains, and this is gonna come out of water retained earnings, which is basically free cash for the Water Enterprise Fund. And it's $1 million appropriation, and we picked the projects off the list that the water department has. And it's basically the ones that leak the most are the ones that are at the top of the list, and those are the ones we replace. So we'll be doing $1 million worth of work for water main replacement. We haven't done this in a couple of years, so it's good to see it back on. And then if you look for the free cash that Clancy just put up, the water retained earnings free cash is 3.5 million. And if we take $1 million out for this purpose and another 100,000 out for, I believe, the next article, then that's 1.1 million. There'll be a balance in there of 2.4 million. So that's good. I think, so that's good. This project will be paid for with money that's already been raised, not by adding anything to the levy or to the rates. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
John, we have no questions on this article.
Okay, in Article 27, this is the next one out of free cash. It's $100,000. You see this on here pretty much every year. And we're taking this out of retained earnings. And this money is being used to replace hydrants in the water system. And we've replaced about 646 hydrants to date. I think there's about 2,300 in the system. Not all of them are public, but I believe there's 2,300. And this has been a very successful program that the DPW, or the Water Department, has been doing to replace these hydrants with town personnel. And we've done pretty good at it. And to my knowledge, we're one of the only communities that I know of that has a comprehensive replacement program. So many communities, don't pay attention to this, and then, the water hydrants don't work when they pull up to them. So this is a great program, and again, it's funded through retained earnings and money that's already been raised. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No questions here either.
Okay, Article 28 is the Glad Valley. This is a Lexington Road in Glad Valley Drive project. This is basically to clean up to reconfigure that intersection and make it a little bit less dangerous. But also it'll involve bringing a sidewalk from there up to where the sidewalks extend down from the town center. So it'll provide connectivity from the town center all the way down to this point, which I think is a great thing to have pedestrian safety brought all the way down to this area. This is on the tip for 2026, so it's still a little bit ways out, but we're still in the design phase, and we need $500,000 to continue that from 25% to 100% design. And we would, that's what this is for, and it would be coming right out of free cash. So it's not being raised or appropriated. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Oh, there you go. There's the schematic of the plan too, that shows Glad Valley right there.
John,
You
no
make that
questions
any-
here either.
Okay. You make that any bigger, Clancy? You could see, I guess it shows the sidewalk coming up there. And yeah, so it's going up to Tower Farm Road. So that's quite a stretch. So that's a great project. So we're looking forward to seeing that in the next couple of years. Well, slowly but surely, we chip away at Boston Road. And we've done a lot of work to make Boston Road a much safer and more appealing stretch of road. So that's very good. The next
John, I get this
article-
question
Yeah.
regularly on social media. Is there a street light in this section, this Glad Valley, Lexington? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think there is actually, yes, yeah. And there has to be timing there because it's got there's two spots, and I remember Kelly talking about that issue of timing between those two lights.
John, we got two questions on this one. First, I'm gonna bring in Selectman Burns. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, I should be unmuted now. So yeah, I was just going to add in that to your question about the streetlights is that, yes, this is an elongated intersection. So there's lights at either end of that section, at the Glad Valley side and at the Lexington Road side, so that it can control that intersection. So it's just, think of it as a big intersection because of the two streets coming into it. So, but there are traffic controls at that section. That was all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Did it better than I did.
Mike Parker, you're in the meeting.
All right. Just wanted to echo what you said, Mr. Curran, about really upgrading our main road.
Mike, we lost you.
Yeah, you're frozen. Good headshot, but it would be better if you were moving. Oh, there you are.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to echo about upgrading our Boston Road. You mentioned that this was 2026.
Yes,
What is the other side of Boston Road down towards Good Street to Floyd Street? When's that going to be done?
2023.
So 2023, then the other side will be 2026. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep getting those stretches done. It will look
Yeah,
great.
I hesitate, I always hesitate to comment on these projects because when I first came here 11 years ago, I came here on the heels of that whole issue with the previous town manager making the comments about curb appeal on Boston Road. And it's been a personal mission of mine to make sure that Boston Road is improved. And it hasn't always been easy, but I think we've made a lot of great progress along Boston Road. And I think it looks a lot better than it looked 10 years ago, you know?
Yep. And also our side streets that are getting done also, over here on Baldwin Road, and we've done stretches of Allen Road, and it's really great to see our roads getting upgraded. Love to see more sidewalks go in. We need to get some more sidewalks on some of these main roads like Andover Road and 129, and up connecting our center to our other areas. That would be great if we could start doing more of that.
Yeah, we're working on it.
I know. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
John,
Okay.
next up is MSKCR.
Oh, okay.
Hi, John, Steve Rigo. There's no lights at Lexington Glad Valley. The lights are at Wyman Road. So there's no traffic lights, at Lexington Road and Glad Valley.
They're at Wyman Road.
From Wyman Road is where the lights are.
All right, well, I'll make sure that when we present this at town meeting, that's made clear so that people understand exactly where they are.
Yeah, because I take Wyman Road when I want to take a left on Boston Road. Because it's difficult to take a left on Lexington Road.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, thank you.
welcome.
John, next up is Justin.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep,
Yep.
I just want to know if you know what's going to happen to the island at that intersection there. Is it just going to be all pavement, or if you know?
I don't know exactly what the final resolution is for that island, but I'll make sure that at town meeting, we have a clear depiction of what the outcome of that, what the resolution is for that.
Awesome, thank you.
John, Vicky's up next.
Hi, Vicky.
Vicky, you just have to unmute yourself.
There you go.
I'm just wondering, I believe there's also a memorial on that island. Will they move that to a new location if that island goes away? Or what happens to the memorial that's there, the veteran memorial?
I believe there is still going to be an island of some sort there, so I think we can relocate it in a respectful way in that complex, but I'll check with Kelly Conway, make sure that there are plans for that to be treated with respect.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
This is
Well, there we go.
so yeah, it does look like there's stoplights here, stoplights here. It's a little bit of a green area, sort of a sidewalk connection, so.
So, yeah, so the monument will be able to be, respectfully displayed somewhere in that area. I guess the important thing is to make sure that it's maintained too. So we will do that as well. Although that's state, but we'll have to maintain it because I believe that right of that easement is going to be owned by the town, so.
John, no other questions on this one.
Okay, so we are next to fund the Boston Road easements. Cost of easement compensation. So this is an appropriation from free cash of $700,000 to fund the Boston Road North project. And this is a shot, a conceptual shot of Good Street right beside Town Hall, which shows some of the improvements. You can see that the project is more than just a repaving the streets. It has streetscapes and it's gonna be a beautiful project. I think it's gonna do a lot to bring, you know, what we did on the other side of the town center up to this. I mean, it's gonna be really spectacular. So it's a great project. Now, the easements we're talking about, I know in particular, there are easements like on that corner that was shown in the right, you know, on the lower corner. And but we don't anticipate at this time these to be very adversarial easements because, you know, they're not significant. And I think it's such an improvement to the area that I think that the easements won't be an issue, except that we do have to pay for them all along that line. So that's what the appropriation is for. There was one resident along this project that was concerned about a light being placed just before the Good Street intersection to a warning light, basically. And so we're working with the state to see if that's a requirement. But to date, that's the only real, you know, constituent concern we have seen about the project. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You can see it goes from all the way from back further before those condominiums down there, right before the house school, all the way up to Bridge Street. And then it's less of a streetscape project beyond that point.
John, no questions on this article.
Okay. All right, that's Article 29. Article 30, 31, and 32 have been withdrawn. And Article 33 is the construction of 15,000 linear feet of 18-inch sewer force main. So this is a main that goes under the bridge on Pond Street, I believe, along the railroad track, through a wetland. And that's the trifecta for very expensive sewer projects. It's been, to be quite frank, a nightmare because it's been difficult having to deal with the wetlands issues, having to deal with easements through the T property is also difficult, and having to navigate through that, under that bridge has also been challenging. So we had an emergency repair that you might recall that we actually asked for money for earlier, and to just get the emergency repair done. And now we're looking to replace this stretch, this 15,000 linear foot stretch, because we anticipate that we'll continue to have these problems. And a lot of the deterioration of this line is the fact that it sits in a wetland, in which can be very corrosive. So it's a line that's just outlived its lifespan and needs to be replaced. So it's a $14 million project. It requires a 2/3 vote because it's a borrowing authorization. And, you know, it's something that we really don't have a choice. We have to do it. So, but it is probably one of the biggest articles on the warrant this spring or fall. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
John, first up is Selectman Burns.
Thank you, Clancy. Yeah, I'll echo the town manager's statements that this is a very important article to get passed. The sewer line that is failing is one of the main sewer lines in town. I believe it's a 24-inch main. Is that correct, Mr. Curran?
18-inch.
18-inch, okay. But it's one of the main sewer lines that connect, through the town. So with that, when this fails, it's a bit of a calamity, as we saw last spring. So, let's hope that everybody will get behind this one and, maintain our sewer systems for going forward. So, thank you.
John, no other questions.
Okay. All right, then that means 2/3 of everybody is okay, I hope. Article 34, very similar in nature in terms of the structure of the article. It's a borrowing article. It's requires a 2/3 vote. It's the biggest article on the warrant. It's $22 million. It's the next contract, Area 37 or Area 4. It is not the area that includes Dudley Road, and I know that was of some concern to residents. So it doesn't require any clarification from that standpoint. But just for people's own edification, when that contract comes up, which is the next contract, it will be, I believe we're going to have a hearing before the select board. And most of the area that the residents up there want taken out is in fact going to be taken out, so. But that's a different project. This project here is, I believe it's in the description. Where is it? It's gonna bring it, it's 4.36 miles of sewer. It will serve 199 homes. And it'll bring us up to 88.6% of the town being sewered. And, it's a $22 million cost. And this is one of the reasons I was adding staff in one of the previous articles, because this is a lot to manage. In these projects, as some of you have noted, I know Michael Parker noted it, is that a lot of the road work that happens in town is happening through these projects because in the past, it wasn't really addressed that way, but we look at these things holistically and we address if there's a water line that needs to be replaced in this area, it gets replaced. If obviously the sewers all get added or replaced. And then if sidewalks and or streets need to be done, they get done in these projects. So it makes them expensive projects, but it makes a lot of sense to do it that way because you got the street dug up anyway. So that's why we do it that way. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
John, I got a couple here. So first is Marley's. Go ahead, Marley's.
Thank you, Clancy. Thank you for the presentation. Now, if I look at this map and I look at the Windsor Road spot, that looks like it's the sand pits between the Lock School and the Jones Forest and Country Club. Is that right?
I presume, yes. Look, trying to make that any bigger, Clancy?
Windsor Road up here.
Oh, there it is, yeah.
I believe that's like the sandpit area. So if you put sewer there, it's inviting development. So that might be good for you, but it's not my my chapter. And then the other one, it's close to the Shawsheen River. So you might think that's good for not getting septic overflow into the Shawsheen River. But the section by Windsor Road, I'm a little concerned about it. And the other thing is it's for 199 homes, 22 million. So about 110,000 per family expense for sewer. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if you do it that way, yes, yeah.
Yeah. I have a few days to think about it. Thank you.
Okay.
John, next up is Dan Burns.
Thank you, Clancy. Something that is important about this project is that you may recall that a few years ago, we rebuilt the Boston Road side of Allen Road. And we put in all dry storage in that neighborhood, right? While we were rebuilding the road and, new gas lines and everything, but we put in storage into that neighborhood, but we have been unable to connect it. It's all been, so it's called dry storage right now. This project connects that side of Allen Road to the other side further down, to allow us to actually turn on all those homes to be able to start getting storage to them. So it's actually we took advantage of the state paying for the Allen Road project to get the storage in the ground. But now this is the interconnect that allows that SOAR to make its way back to the treatment plant. So it's really something very important for us to get past. So while it adds another 192 homes to the list within this immediate area, it also turns on that other neighborhood that we've not been able to activate yet because we needed this interconnect. So this is very, very important to get this one put in the ground and really turn things on. So thank you.
Good point, Dan.
John, next up is John Faria. Go ahead, John, you're in the meeting.
Hey, John.
Hi, how you doing, John?
Good.
This is my favorite side. I didn't understand the concerns that Marcy, was her name Marcy, that
Marlies.
Marlies, on Windsor Road. I'm on Windsor Road. Windsor Road, septic is a problem. It's got a very high water table, and certainly it's a problem, especially after Allen Road was completed. Allen Road was a flood zone and just used to flow down that hill. What's happening now is there's no flooding on Allen Road, but certainly the water table has risen quite a bit in that area, the Wetwood Drive, Windsor Road area. Looking at the article and the amount of money that we're looking for is 22 million, John, is that right?
Yes.
The reason I ask that is because in the last year's preliminary warrant, we were looking for 15.6. Was there a reason for that difference in price tag?
I can't say offhand, but my speculation is that a lot of, like I had mentioned, the road work that we add into these projects, it brings the price tag up. But let me find out, and they may have passed out a contract differently than in the old days. They called it loose ends, but they may have. Let me find out why there was a difference of 15 to 22 million.
Yeah, which is quite a bit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We are now a minority of having no sewerage, so we're not heard all that much. However, I became a town meeting member specifically regarding sewerage in my area.
So are you gonna stay on town meeting after this
We're
vote?
beginning to have septic. I'm sorry?
Are you gonna stay on town meeting after this vote? You've been hanging in there all this time.
Well, the vote better be good. It's
Just to
and that's
add-
the whole reason why. But I've lived, I've been here for 35 years, and I've heard every possible excuse of not doing it, from back up of going forward doing each area because we ran into problems in the Pond Street project, which was an enormous project, and I understand that. What I don't understand about the Pond Street project is that's where that 18-inch main has got to be replaced. Shouldn't that have been done at the same time?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, but yeah, it's a good question. Yeah,
And I'm not looking to put anybody on the spot here, John.
yeah.
I guess my concern is Windsor Road and Wetwood Drive, specifically because that's where my neighbors are and that's where I live. However, I'm not being selfish about it. It's just that that area in some cases is older than the Pond Street project. Telling you that the septics are feeling like crazy. and everyone is putting in what they call turkey mounds, which is raising the level of their properties. They have mountains in their backyards that they never had before, and running a pump to run the water uphill. You know how that works.
Yeah.
To get rid of the sewage. My concern is if we don't get this right away, I'm sick of paying $250 each time to get the tank pumped. I mean, it's like 6 times a year now that I'm doing this. So it is time for us to go forward with this. It really is. And, you know, to be at 88% completion in sewerage, wow, we're almost there, Burlington. We're almost there.
Yeah, it's, and to your point, I mean, the way this was designed a million years ago, when they put this list of priority together, it was based on, you know, need in terms of failing septic systems.
Correct.
Certainly this area has failing septic systems, so there's certainly a need for this to be done. So, you know, we'll certainly make sure we convey that at town meeting, but it is a perfect candidate for sewer projects, especially now.
Yeah, exactly. And the price tag's only going to go up if you don't do it as quickly as possible, I'm sure. I mean,
Well, you know the stories, right? They could have got it done in the 60s, the whole town, the 50 million, and
yeah,
here we
exactly.
are. Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly right. The longer you put it off, pay me now, pay me later, right?
Yeah.
But I truly believe that this project should go forward. And of course, I'll vote for it at town meeting, you know, so. Hopefully we'll get everybody's support on it, and I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody
John,
else?
next up is Vicky.
Okay, hi, Vicky.
Hi again. Just to kind of piggyback on being in support of this, Marliese raised the comment about how much it would be per household for the 199 houses in that red zone here. But you spoke about the fact that the Andover Road area or the Allen Road area, the sewer lines are there, but nobody can use them. Do we know how many homes are included in that dry sewer area?
So I will find that out. I was thinking about that when Dan Burns, Chairman Burns was mentioning that. So I will find out if the number that we're reflecting, which is 199 homes, includes the dry sewer portion on Allen Road. But just to add to what you said, as well as, I mean, it would be unfair to say that it's 122 million divided by the number of homes. I mean, I think you need to take a lot of the road work out of there, because that wouldn't be done like that. That's a different project, and that it's not fair to tack that on to the cost of adding sewer to the neighborhood. It just makes sense to do it at the same time.
Right. So I think at town meeting, if people understood that 199 includes Allen Road, or Allen Road is an additional, 150 houses, that the project itself would be beneficial for everyone involved.
Yeah, we'll get that. We'll make sure that that's in the presentation at town meeting to make that perfectly clear. And I will also make sure that we pass out the road work cost, so that if you take that 199 and maybe it's divided by, instead of 120 million, it's 120 million minus 9 million. I don't know. We'll find out.
Right. Great. Thank you.
John, next up is Carol Meyer.
Hi, Carol.
Hello. I just wanted to ask if we could consider, and I don't know whether you can include this in your presentation or not, but it seems to me that if all of these areas have old and failing septic, and they're contiguous to really environmentally delicate areas like the Shawshene or the Jones Forest or whatever, that this is only the responsible thing to do, from an environmental standpoint. So I just wanted to weigh in with that.
Yeah, I kind of touched on that a few minutes ago, but I absolutely agree. I think we should comment on that, and it is one of the criteria for replacing these systems, is to make sure that, I mean, there's some areas of town that just will never get sewered because maybe they're so remote, or there is too much ledge or whatever, that it's just not going to happen. But this does not fit that, and one of the high priorities is replacing sewers that have failing septic systems that have an environmental impact.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at this map. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
John, next up is Ken Glasser. Go ahead, Ken.
Hi there. Thank you very much, Clancy and Mr. Curran. I want to say I'm totally for this, especially after listening to the Windsor Road person. I would not want to be in his boat at all. I just had a question for Mr. Curran, though. I assume that if we're at 88% and we've gotten rid of most of the easier stuff, continuous low-hanging fruit, we would expect that these would be more expensive as time goes on. Still needed, but I'm just, for sticker shock purposes, I assume the rest are a little bit harder to do and they're going to cost a little more money here and there. So we should, as town members, town meeting reps, should be ready for that, right?
It's a very good point, and good insight on your part. It's a discussion that the select board is going to have over the next few years, is that there may come a point where the return on investment is not worth the money that you're paying if you're paying $380,000 a lot to replace to install sewer. And so it's not this contract, it's probably not the next contract, but then you start knocking on that door when you get out there. So I have a feeling that I would expect that, the town will never be 100% sewer. No town is, but I have a feeling that we'll probably be in between, 91 and 95% is where we would stop. And so we're pretty close. We're pretty close to that. It's hundreds of lots of parcels that are left, not thousands.
Great. Oh, this is good. Thank you very much. Appreciate the clarification.
John, I'm going to bring in John Farrier one more time.
Okay.
Go ahead, John.
Something I didn't bring up, John, is if we have a large section of Allen Road that's dry storage, and we turn it on all at the same time, those with dry storage would have to tie in as well. Am I correct?
Yes.
Isn't that like a payback of a larger sum of folks tying in?
Yes, so we will get, I was going to find out how many homes that would connect and see if they're included in that 199 number. If they're not, they should be. So I will talk to the engineering department and clarify that, and we will add them to that total if they are not already there.
And that would change the numbers on the payback. Am I correct?
Yes.
There you go. There's a plan.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
That's all I got.
Okay, thanks, John.
John, I got Michael Parker coming in next.
Okay.
Hopefully my internet is okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you right now.
Sorry about this tonight. As a precinct 5 town meeting member, I would be completely for this, as those are almost all people I represent. But to echo Marlise's concern about the lock pits at the end of Windsor Lane, that map depicts us turning right into the lock pits. Is that for a future connection? Is that needed for a reason? Can you elaborate at all on that, Mr. Curran?
So I think that's just showing the roadway itself, not the line. You know, you talk about Windsor Road there.
Yep.
Yeah, so it doesn't mean that the line goes all the way down right to the end. It's not depicted on that map, so. The existing sewer is depicted on the map. In the pink areas is where we're adding it, but it doesn't show the actual placement of the lines.
Okay, yeah, I would like to echo her, sentiment about ending the line there and keeping that area undeveloped. We need to keep our forests intact. And that's one of our areas that we can do something about. So hopefully when the plans get more detailed, we'll see an end point there. Thank you.
Okay. And just for people's information, I mean, even if that site were to be developed, I mean, the town, we wouldn't have any interest in bringing the line all the way down. We'll put that on a developer to do, so under any scenario, I don't see the line going down very far if there are no homes down there.
Go ahead, Marlies.
Thank you, Clancy. Marlies again. To your point, Michael, indeed, the line only goes to number 26. It doesn't, like Mr. Curran says, it doesn't go all the way follow the street. So that's, I looked it up on the Maps Online GIS, and you can see the proposed sewer and the existing sewer, and it takes away my concern that it goes into the pits. So thank you, Michael, for bringing it up. And thank you, Mr. Town Manager, for the presentation. Very good.
Thank you.
All right, John, what else you got?
All right, Article 35.
Oh, and John, we got John Farrier here one more time. I think
Okay.
he wants to
Yeah.
have the last word, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, because I know all about it. Mike Parker, to answer your question, which was an excellent question. Developers are looking into it, hearing that storage is coming in. So it's going to be a positive thing, I think, for those pits to be developed, because part of it was developed with 3 foundations, but failed perk testing. Now, and John Curran is right. Why would he go into that area if a developer wants to do it? Let the developer do it. But the developer already knows that storage is going in, and I think is interested in doing just that, John. That's it.
All right, thank you, John.
We got one more. Justin, you're in the meeting.
Thank you. Just a quick question. A few years ago, if I remember correctly, there was some kind of negotiation or donation made to the town, I think, of that land, those lock pits. I'm not sure if that's actually true or if that was a plan that fell through. I'm wondering maybe if any selectmen could chime in on that too, because I thought that was something that they may have voted on.
So that did actually fall through. That was part of it came about as a result of the Alpine project that was owned by, I think, Cormier, and they owned property out back here. I think there's those 3 lots. And they also own some parcel out there, and they had talked about donating the land to the town, but at the time, I believe conservation was not particularly interested in the sand pits, and it never got followed through to its conclusion based on the fact that it had to be, it was, I think, being donated as conservation land, and I don't believe they accepted it.
Well, that's a shame that conservation wouldn't accept that. I can't believe that, but at the same time, I can. I think if we can go back and get it, if they'd be willing to negotiate again to donate it, we should take it, because that's a buffer between Jones Forest and the Lock baseball fields. We shouldn't have a development coming right into the middle of it. It would be horrible. Thank you.
John, no other questions on this one.
Okay, Article 35, I think is the next one, and that is just a simple pass-through for $159,000. From, with it comes into the town coffers from Verizon for cable-related costs, and it goes into the BATV account, so it's required that this has to be approved by appropriations with town meeting. And this is a legislative act that was passed a few years back in response to some communities that were abusing the spending of cable-related funding and spending it on things that weren't really cable-related, which has never been an issue in Billerica. That money has always gone toward PEG access issues and cable-related things, so. But anyway, it just requires a sort of a perfunctory act of town meeting to approve it, so. And unless anybody has any questions, I'll move on to the next one.
John, no questions.
Okay, Article 36, I kind of referred to this a little bit earlier. This is that portion of our debt policy of transferring a minimum of $1.8 million into debt stabilization. And similar to what we did last year, we'll be taking $1 million from free cash and $1 million from wastewater free cash, since most of the debt in the town is wastewater debt. And we're transferring that 1.8 million into the debt stabilization fund. And with this transfer in the 1.774 transfer out, the balance in that account will remain stable. It won't really change, except for any interest or anything that hits the account this year. So that's a good thing, and it fulfills the town's performance of all of our debt service policies. And I believe it's just a majority vote. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
John, nothing on this one.
Okay, and then Article 42, Articles 37, 38, 39, 40, and 41 were withdrawn. And Article 42 is the authorization to authorize the select board to accept the roads as public ways. And the three roads in question are Everett Farmer Road, Farmer Lane, and Simmons Lane. And some of you may recall that we have been actually accepting roads at a greater rate than we had in the past. And that's because we changed the bylaw, the town changed the bylaw to make it less cumbersome process to do that. These particular roadways, they come off of Boston Road, and it's important for us to get them accepted because it will help us ultimately with Boston Road projects.
John, no questions.
Okay, and then I think there's Article 43, which is granting an easement to National Grid. We have already granted them a license to traverse town property on 70 Letchworth Avenue, which is part of the wastewater treatment plant project that's going on down there. So this is just granting an easement to National Grid to traverse town property, and it's needed for the project that we're currently working on. So unless there are any questions, I'll move on.
A question by Marlies Henderson, please.
Yeah.
Is it possible to amend the article with a condition that the easements are also for trail use, like hiking and biking? I believe I've seen it on a section of the Mass Central Rail Trail that the utilities paid for the paving of the path, so their vehicles could use it.
So I would have to look at the easement and see exactly what the logistics of it are to see if that's a possibility. I'm certainly not opposed to that, but of course, I would hope the National Grid would not be opposed to it, but we have to see if it lends itself to that. I don't have the map right. Did Abdul give us that map?
Let me check.
It seems like a good way to make a project the best project that it can be for us.
Okay. So can you just So I think the easement is, so it could be for just for overhead lines too, Marlise. So let me check into exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So it looks like there's some underground utilities and some overhead lines.
Mhm.
And so let me see how that all works out and whether that lends itself at all to what you're asking for. You know,
The good thing of these prep evenings is that there's time to look into if
yeah,
it's lends itself for it. Thank you.
yeah. So I will do that and I'll get back to you before town meeting.
Thank you.
John, it looks like just from the description, primary cable and customers installed duct banks to a new transformer. So I don't know if it's
Right, and that
really
might
much of
be sort of,
anything.
it might be sort of like,
Underground.
in more private area than public access. So well, let me
Yeah.
just check. We'll get back here.
Mhm.
Anyone else, Mr. Main?
I think that's it. I think that pretty much wraps up the warrant too.
Yeah, that's it. So, there are 3 petitioners articles, but they're not being submitted by the town, so we won't be commenting on those. But that's it. Is there any final questions, about town meeting? Oh, just, I would say that, I think the moderator is gonna be pretty, strict on the mask, requirement, not only because it's a local order, but it's also a state mandate inside the school building. So that'll be something, there is not, a social distancing requirement, so if you're there with your spouse or someone that lives with you, you can actually sit next to each other, you don't have to space apart. And if we did do social distancing in that room, we probably couldn't fit everybody in there. But the room is a fairly big room and there are about 700 seats in there, and I think 500 seats in the lower level, which is where the town meeting members would sit. So we probably expect to get about 180 people in that room, and there are 500 seats. So I think it'll be fairly, comfortable, and, that room is well ventilated too, so that's a good thing as well. And, all the materials will be available at the front and in front of the auditorium, at the beginning of the meeting. And, hopefully it goes well, and we will be using the clickers, to vote. Let's hope that, sometimes when they've been out of service for so long, they get a little punchy, and people haven't used them too, so they get a little punchy, so, we're gonna make sure we test them, to the nth degree before the meeting, and to try to make sure we don't have any issues. But I think that about covers it, Clancy, unless you think I've forgotten something.
Hopefully the books will be available digitally either tomorrow or Friday, and then hard copies hopefully on Friday or Monday for everybody else. But we'll email it out to everybody. And John, we just got a couple more questions here, so
Okay.
I'll bring these people in. It seems like probably about town meeting. MSKCR, you're in the meeting.
Yeah, John, when we got cards the last time, they didn't have the numbers on them. Are we going to get new cards with the number for the clickers?
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I have a question too. Since I'm a pandemic town meeting member, I haven't actually ever been to a regular town meeting. So will we get our clickers when we check in, or how does that even work?
So so you come in, you check in, with the town clerk. They'll have a table for the town clerk. And then there'll be another table where you go to check out your clicker. There'll be a bunch of volunteers that are working, at that table to help town meetings get their clickers.
Okay, thank you.
Carol, in the beginning of the book, we'll also have directions, and we'll most likely have Chris Bartlett give a quick tutorial because, like you, there's many others who have never been to an actual town meeting where we use the clicker. So,
Okay, great.
John, we just got Ken Glasser. Go ahead, Ken.
Thank you, Clancy. Thank you, Mr. Curran. I just wanted to say, I hope you guys can have this in the high school forever and not in that overcrowded stuffy room. I mean, moving your chair an inch could knock somebody over in front of you or behind you in the other room. High school is perfect. It's ventilated, it's technologically up. We spent a ton for it. I hope you can use it for all the town meetings. Just my thoughts. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Kay.
John, and I think we've taken care of everybody.
All right, well, I really appreciate the high number of people that come out for this meeting. Since, you know, it's really, there's not any real high ticket items on it, but I'm glad to see that people came out to participate. And hopefully it helps us to expedite some of town meeting business. And if you do have any questions between now and town meeting, don't hesitate to call my office or send an email. We'll be happy to help in any way that we can. And I look forward to seeing everybody at town meeting. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.